Welcome. I'm Sarah D, and this is...
I'm Dr. D.
And we're going to have an economic conversation, basically definitions. Kind of like maybe, I don't know, do you do these in Econ 101?
Sometimes, yes. Most of them we would define, yes.
Sometimes. And so the first one, these are terms that you'll hear in the news.
Yes.
And some of them may confuse you, like they confuse me. If you're anything like me, maybe some of them confuse you. And so Dr. D has been studying economics for what? Forever.
Forever.
Like the...
Since the 80s.
Yeah, since the 80s. That's forever. Some of you weren't even born then. So anyway, that means he knows it.
I know some definitions.
Yeah, and he's been teaching it for a long time. So the first definition, probably a lot of people know what it means. I think of balloons. We've used balloons before. It's inflation.
Yeah, inflation as balloons kind of misses the point of what inflation's about, right? So everybody thinks of, when you think of it in terms of balloons, it's getting fat, right? That's inflation. Or getting bigger is...
You're inflating it.
You're getting it bigger, right? But what's really happening is prices are going up.
Yeah, the prices are getting bigger.
Okay.
So
but the prices, it's not like they're getting bigger stickers on the...
Pardon me?
It's not like I'm putting a bigger price sticker on...
You mean not a more expensive one?
No, bigger. Like I used to use small little sticker, and now I use a big sticker. A balloon inflates, it's still the same balloon, it's just bigger.
Yeah.
But when prices inflate, they aren't the same price.
I know your air is the price.
Oh.
Your air is inflating. That's good, right?
I don't
It doesn't work for you.
It doesn't work for me at all.
That's okay. Opportunity costs are still opaque, but that's okay. We're not talking about them today. I'm getting close with opportunity costs. Inflation.
General rise in prices.
Deflation.
General fall in prices.
So hopefully you can see that if it's something that you... Those are probably good for you, okay?
Yeah.
So next we've got... And these are all economic terms in blue. These ones in red are not necessarily economic terms, but they're terms that are used to describe economics, kind of like poetry. It's an azure sky as opposed to a blue sky.
Yeah, it's usually done by people that want to sell you something.
Yeah. Yes, politicians.
Yeah, politicians.
Yep. And, everybody has something they want to do. So continuing on with, now we're at the recession.
Yeah, recession. Recession is when the economy shrinks for 2 consecutive quarters. So technically, the U.S. is in a recession right now because the first quarter, the first 3 months of 2020, the economy shrunk. Okay. And in the second quarter, that's months 4, 5, and 6, the economy shrunk by an itsy bitsy bit. We'll find out whether or not that itsy bit holds up as we investigate exactly whether it shrunk or not.
So they did a rough accounting and
well, they did the first draft, yes. I don't know, rough is the wrong term. The first draft.
Okay. And so then they're going to review it to make sure that
they'll review it, yeah.
Okay.
More data comes in, they'll review it.
So that's what a recession is. So technically we're in a recession, but maybe it will in September? October.
By October we'll know, yes.
By October, we may not have been in a recession.
We may not have been, yeah. So it depends. So if it depends upon who you're talking to, right? Yes. So if you're talking to the Biden administration, we're not in a recession.
And
I hope they're right. I'm not against it, but the numbers so far don't agree with them.
That's a positive spin on the possibility that those numbers that don't agree will change.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
That does happen.
Because technically we're in a recession.
Okay.
Until the numbers are updated.
Very good. Okay.
And the last one's a depression. Now, a depression is like just a really bad recession. So it's a recession that lasts at least 2 years. So that's 8 quarters.
Okay.
So it's 8 quarters or 2 years of negative growth. For those of you that don't understand negative growth is we make less and less stuff. That's negative growth.
Very good.
We shrink. Output in the economy shrinks. So there we go. So it's 2 years of the economy shrinking, and the unemployment rate has to hit above 20%. And we haven't had one of those since the late 1920s, early 30s. So we haven't had a depression since the Great Depression.
And before the Great Depression, we had about how many?
Probably about 8.
About 8, but then...
In the first 100 and whatever years.
And now in the next 100
years, Not quite 100 years.
Okay. We have only had one.
We only had the one that started in 29.
So what's different?
The thing
Are
is,
people just smarter?
the government actively intervenes in the macroeconomy through the Federal Reserve.
Now, the macroeconomy isn't a term we have up here, but that just means...
The whole country economy.
Okay, as opposed
Not just
to...
my economy or your economy or Facebook's economy, but the whole country's economy. That's called the macroeconomy.
Okay, so they intervene in the macroeconomy. The government does this, but the government...
Technically, yes. So the government does through two ways. One is through fiscal policy. That's when the Congress and the administration decide to spend more, spend less, tax more, or tax less. That's fiscal policy. And that will adjust or shock or change the macroeconomy.
Okay. So one way they do it is with fiscal policy.
Fiscal policy.
Okay.
The other way it's done is through something called monetary policy. And that's done by the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve changes the money supply.
I guess why monetary kind of is spelled like money almost, right?
Yeah, it is. Its root is money.
Makes sense. Oh, it's good when the words make sense with what they do. I like that.
Yes.
I can.
Yeah, so monetary policy is done by the Federal Reserve.
All right. So the Federal Reserve is perhaps doing a great job.
So it depends, right? So the Federal Reserve has done a great job since, let's say, the 1970s, when it was allowed to act decisively in the macroeconomy.
Okay, when we dropped gold?
But yeah, so we were on a gold standard, which restricted the ability of the Federal Reserve to do things. So lots of people think we should go back on the gold standard to stop the Federal Reserve from doing whatever it is. You have to remember that when we were on the gold standard, we had 8 depressions and then the Great Depression. So I don't know that the gold standard was so useful, but we did have those. And since we moved off of the gold, so we moved off the gold standard through World War II. But after World War II, we set up a fixed exchange rate world system where the dollar became kind of the equivalent of gold, and it was backed by gold.
It was backed by gold.
Of it, in a sense, yes. Right? So the agreement, so it's not as clear, but there was an agreement, a general agreement that if another country wanted to trade the dollars that they had, they could get gold. Yes.
Okay, so that was at that time period, but in the 70s that went away?
That went away in the 70s.
Okay, all right.
So that went away with the end of something called Bretton Woods, which happened in the early 70s.
So we've been moving away from gold, and we've been having fewer depressions.
Yeah, we haven't had a depression since we've gone off the gold standard. We have not had a depression.
That's cool, right?
Yeah. No, we have not.
So even though...
And we've only had pretty mild recessions, except for the Great Recession of 2008.
And that was for how long?
So that lasted for less than 2 years. It lasted for
Because it didn't become a depression.
It didn't become a depression.
Okay.
It could have, easily.
But now we are in a recession, and it is biting people's budgets. It's biting people's bottom line.
Yeah.
And so there's another term that is said on the news, and it's not talking about deers.
No, that's right. So stagflation. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, we're going into a time of stagflation."
Yeah.
And so and you can understand why they say it, because stagflation, by definition, is a pseudo-economic term that was coined in the 70s by a British government official, and then it was later taken, pretty fully in the 70s by news media and everything, which talked about a problem that we had where the economy was in stagnation, that is, it was slumping, and inflation was skyrocketing.
And so that was happening at that time.
Yes. And so it was just given the name stagflation. Now, there were lots of things that were happening. The most important one is that we were changing the world monetary system.
Oh, that's when we went off the gold standard.
That's when we went off Bretton Woods.
There was a really huge shock going on.
There was a huge shock going on, yes, which isn't happening now.
Yeah, whenever you make a big change,
yes,
there's a big shock.
And that was a big change in the monetary system.
Right.
And so the deal is that a lot of people say, well, there was the oil embargo, but that's just Yes. No, there was a change in the basic monetary system, and that caused most of what we call stagflation. It wasn't some oil shock by Saudi Arabia not selling us oil. That wasn't the issue. Although we like to blame it on that because we don't like to say...
We don't want to own it.
We don't want to own it. Yeah, OFLM.
OFLM, yeah.
We don't want to own it, right? So that's stagflation. And so some people say, well, we might be going into stagflation because we have fairly high inflation, right? It's up in the 6 and 7%, maybe 8% range, depending upon where you want to talk about it. And, oh, by the way, there's... we've gone into a recession. Technically, we've gone into a recession. Not a deep recession, but we have gone into a recession. So the economy is stagnating. So you could say that we have stagnation and inflation, which would give us stagflation, except that we don't have low unemployment. We don't have high unemployment. Sorry, we have low unemployment. So that's so it's not the same thing. We don't have 12% unemployment and 17% inflation, and right, we're not in that world.
Yeah, we're what at right now? Unemployment is at
3.5%. Yeah, that's pretty low.
Okay, and unemployment peaked at 10% in the banking crisis of 2007, right?
And it peaked at about 15% with COVID. Mm-hmm. In the COVID recession, right? So 2020 recession.
And that didn't last more than two.
I think that lasted 1.25 years.
I mean.
Oh no, the 2007 one lasted 1.25 years. The COVID one didn't last that long.
It didn't become a depression. I mean.
No, did not. Neither. I mean, we had the banking crisis of 2007-8. It lasted for 1.25 years. Didn't make depression, and we had the COVID one, and it didn't make depression either.
Okay, so we're keeping our head above water.
Yeah, we're doing pretty well.
And so we just need to keep our heads rational in our heads to understand what's going on and not be fearful. That's my soapbox. Yeah. Don't let fear lead the way, even though that's what we want to do. We like to exaggerate and blame it on not me. Okay, so then the last one that we're going to go over is something called an economic winter, which is a seasonal look at economics, like as if there were a period that went from spring to summer to fall to winter to spring to summer to fall to winter. And what do you think about that, Dr. Dudley?
I think that's a dumb way to look at it, but that's just me personally, right? But to say that the economy has highs and lows is correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
The economy does have highs and lows. But seasons are predictable.
Mm-hmm. The highs and lows aren't always because you don't know what the shock. Who knew COVID? No,
right. So the question is, it's June. I know winter's coming. Why? Because it's going to become December, and that's just the way it is.
Exactly, and also winter starts December 21st, right?
Yeah.
About then the winter solstice.
At the winter solstice, yes.
And fall, we aren't in autumn yet. It will start on the 21st of September. I can't remember. September, October, November. Yeah, 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months.
Yeah, it's around the 21st of every 3 months. Actually, these quarters go season. The quarters go seasonally.
But in a sense, yes. Except that we do quarters by calendar year, not by where the sun is in the sky. No, so different, but that's fine.
That's similar.
And so people like to think of there's highs and lows in the activity of the economy, and so they like to think of it as a cycle. And the problem with the cycle concept is that cycles are periodic and consistent. Right, so when I talk about a cycle, I'm talking about something that's periodic and consistent. And so now I'm going to start predicting things by adding some concept of consistency. It's up, so it has to go down. Well, yes, it's up, so it has to go down. But when it goes down is a whole different story, and it's not something that's easily predictable. And a matter of fact, we had a recession in 2020, and guess what? We have another one in 2022. Right. So, and the one before that was in 2007 and 8. So, tell me that they're
predictable.
They're not predictable.
Right.
They're not cyclical. They're not predictable. I know we call it the business cycle in Econ, which is a problem, But this concept of adding this consistency of cycle to it, like economic winter, is like folly.
Kind of like those magnet things I did.
Yeah.
The ideal.
Short run and the long run are two. The short run is short,
but it doesn't.
but it's not short.
And the
It
long
could be very
run,
long, short.
And the long run could be shorter than the short run.
Absolutely.
So same kind of a thing.
Same kind of.
You can check our
Yeah,
one on that.
absolutely.
if you want to.
Same kind of stuff. And so the question is, well, what is an economic winter? And so the consensus on what and this is a problem with poetic terms. The consensus on what economic winter means is that one, we have deflation, that is prices going down. We don't have that going on. We have prices going up.
Inflation, prices going up. We don't have that?
No, prices are going
I'm
up.
going to cross that one off.
Yeah, prices aren't going down.
Okay.
Or they're slowing down at going up, but they're still going up. The second one is that we're in economic depression.
But we're only in a recession.
Yes, we're not in an economic
We
depression.
have to be for
2 years. Yeah,
and that's an extremely severe recession. So maybe
Yeah.
it isn't even like you said.
We're not even certain
quarter.
for sure whether
Well, yeah, it wasn't very severe.
it wasn't.
The
Yeah.
second quarter wasn't very severe, but it did count.
So we're not in a depression
Okay, so we'll cross that one off.
and high unemployment. Though we don't have that either.
Way higher than normal unemployment. No,
We don't have that either.
higher than normal levels of bankruptcy.
I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, so we're not sure about that.
That one's a big
So-
question mark. Maybe we have.
So as far as the economic winter goes, we're certainly not there right now.
Right. So if you're talking about economic winter from a macroeconomic perspective, that is an economic winter that all of the U.S. is going through in general. Clearly, we're not there. I don't know that we've ever had one.
Interesting, yeah.
So I don't know that we've ever had one, but it's clearly not.
If you know when we had all these, because this definition comes from Business Insider, mark it in the post.
And maybe
okay?
the Great Depression made it to an economic winter. I don't know. Maybe. Right. But I've never lived through. Now, the other way to think about economic winter is on the individual level.
Right. Right. Not on the macro, but on the micro.
On the micro level. So
On the micro
let's
level.
let's just pretend like I learned some skill.
Okay.
And I got really good at that skill and I was getting paid really well because I had that really high skill. And all of a sudden that skill became no longer important.
Right. You were
Nobody's willing to pay for it.
buggy whips. You were the best. But
I
we
was
don't
the
use
best
them
buggy
anymore.
whip manufacturer, but we use cars now instead of horses. So now my great skill at braiding leather to make buggy whips is no longer useful or necessary. I am going to go into a personal economic winter where I'm going to have high unemployment. I have no job. I'm going to have deflation. I probably won't have deflation but my wage will deflate.
But that's the government's fault, isn't it? They just need to do something. That's what I hear people say, that the government is causing this.
Causing the economic winter?
The economic winter in the personal
Well,
realm.
if there was-
Since we're not in it on a physical realm, but I see people talking about
Right,
that.
so the people you see talking about it, for example, if we're talking about self-help gurus, in particular, let's say self-help gurus, and they're talking about economic winter, they're talking about economic winter because they want to sell me or you
Oh, their program.
a program that will help me or you do better in downturns.
And it may very well do that.
And it may do that, but it's not an economic winter. It's just the use of a term that's very poetic and it's very scary to
Yeah.
sell you
Right.
a program.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Have we done this? We've done it.
We've talked about
We've
these cool
talked about
things.
these cool things.
Yeah.
We're not in an economic winter on the macro level. Personally, if he were a buggy whip maker, we would be in that right now.
But we're not.
But he's not a buggy whip maker.
No.
I don't even know if you know how to braid. Anyway.
Not well enough to be a
excellent
skilled buggy whip manufacturer.
So
Clearly not my skill.
maybe we would have been out of luck.
We would have been economic winter,
I
even
would
if
have been
that
the one doing
was. Yeah,
braiding.
you'd have been.
That would have been me. That would have been me.
you.
Okay. So we hope that defining these terms, yeah, starts with a T, has been useful for you, and that you don't feel afraid.
Yeah, we have inflation. We may be, by strict definition, in a recession. We're not in a depression, and we're not dealing with deflation, and inflation looks to be coming down. That is, the rate at which the prices are going up is slowing down, which sounds like a good thing too.
Yeah. You may not notice it if you're only looking for how some prices are
Well,
going
gas
up.
prices come down.
But yeah, at least gas prices happen. So
Food prices are starting to fall.
just if
Yeah.
you whatever you look for, you're going to find.
Yes.
Somebody very wise said that long time ago.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Sarah D. Thank you for joining us. Hope this was useful for you. Let us know in the comments below if you have thoughts on it or anything else econ.
I'm Dr. D. Namaste.
Make it a great day. Namaste.